I know what you're wondering. How did all this start, right? Check this out.
Wars of the last 50 years is one that we don't hear about much. When, in 1980, two of the Middle East's most powerful countries, Iran and Iraq, waged 8 years of some of the worst trench and chemical warfare since World War I, leaving both countries devastated. It's 1979, and Iran is in the middle of a revolution. The country is coming off of decades of being ruled by the Shah, a king that the US and UK had installed in the 50s after covertly overthrowing Iran's democratically elected leader. But after years of the Shah's corrupt autocratic rule, a mass uprising violently overthrows him, creating what becomes an Islamic Republic, headed by an Ayatollah named Ruhollah Khomeini. Khomeini and a group of Shia religious scholars want to impose fundamentalist rule on the country, and are hostile to both the Western powers and the neighboring Soviet Union. They establish a military force called the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, which is meant to protect their hold on the revolution. And to
Also, what you have to understand is the views that they have on us as Americans, it totally goes against their religious beliefs and everything that they just stand firm on. So our presence there, us putting somebody in charge of them, was like a disgrace.
suppress the other groups who helped overthrow the Shah. The US is watching all of this in shock. Their biggest ally in the region, and a major oil producer, has just turned from friend to fierce enemy. But the biggest tremors of this revolution are felt in the rest of the Middle East. Iran sends out radio broadcasts to Arab countries like Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, Kuwait, and Iraq, calling for people to rise up and overthrow their own rulers. They're trying to export their revolution to their neighbors, to gain new allies in the region. Neighboring leaders, most of them Sunni Muslim, don't like this. Saudi Arabia's king fears being overthrown, just like the Shah was. And in Iraq, Saddam Hussein sees this Shia religious revolution on his eastern border and worries that the Shia majority that he rules over will rise up against him too. But he also sees this as an opportunity. Iran and Iraq have been fighting over this border territory for years. This waterway is a critical access point to the Persian Gulf, where both countries export their oil to the rest of the world. In a treaty between the two back in 1975, Saddam had to give up full control of this waterway, as well as access to oil-rich regions in what was now Iran. Saddam hates this treaty and is considering taking the waterway back by force. The Iranian Revolution has left the country weak and fractured. Khomeini and his Revolutionary Guard are still fighting other political factions for control. The Iranian military, which used to be funded and trained by the United States, is now weak, its leaders having been jailed or executed after the revolution. Iran's military would normally be able to crush Iraq in an invasion, but maybe not anymore. Saddam sees this as an opportunity to weaken a major rival. Saddam is also riding on a delusion that he himself is going to unify the Arab world under his leadership. If he invades Iran, maybe the rest of the Middle East will rally behind him against this new common enemy. He thinks it'll be a quick victory. So in September of 1980, he decides to prepare 10,000 Iraqi troops to cross the border to invade Iran. What's about to happen here isn't just the start of a new war. Saddam is kicking off a dynamic that will dominate the Middle East for more than 40 years. The fight between revolutionary change and status quo power. The war officially starts when Saddam sends his air force over the border in a surprise attack on Iranian air bases. His 10,000 soldiers cross from Basra into southern Iran. Further north, Saddam opens a second front to seize strategically located border towns and put pressure on his enemy. These air attacks mostly fail, and Iran responds with airstrikes of their own into Iraqi territory, hitting oil facilities. Iran still has sophisticated jets that the United States had given the previous regime. This gives them an edge in the air. The war quickly sucks in the rest of the region. Israel is among the first. It wants to keep these two adversaries occupied, fighting with each other, keeping both sides weak. So almost immediately, Israel secretly sells supplies and parts to Iran. This helps the Iranian Air Force keep planes in the air. Now, Iran and Israel are not friends, but Israel sees Iraq as a greater threat here, so they're willing to support. Iran needs to get its military organized if they're going to fight this war. Right. So they release military officers that they had jailed during the revolution. War tends to unify a nation. And in this case, the fractured country of Iran is unifying around Iraq's invasion, creating this irony that Saddam is the one who actually cements Khomeini's hold on power. Saudi Arabia and Kuwait also step in here, giving billions of dollars to fund Iraq's war efforts. They want to weaken Iran and turn back its revolution. The Middle East is now dividing between, on one side, Arab states who are ruled by aging Sunni monarchies and strongmen who fear change, and on the other side, a Shia Iran, bent on revolution, on remaking the region in its image. They say the war will continue until his rule is ended. Saddam, of course, refuses, so Iran goes on the offensive. Their forces are now organized, their officers have been freed from jail, and they're able to recapture the territory that Saddam had taken, even pushing into Iraq. Saddam's hopes of a quick victory and a gain of some valuable territory are now dead, so he turns to the United States for support, and the US agrees to help. They hope to weaken Iran and its call for anti-American Islamic revolution across the region. So the US starts giving Saddam intelligence and satellite imagery on Iranian troop movement. Iraq also gets another big backer, the Soviet Union. The Soviets are at war in neighboring Afghanistan, trying to suppress another religious uprising. But they also have allies in this region. So over the course of the war, the Soviets become a top supplier of weapons to Iraq.
Ooh.
Now remember the situation between these two. It's a tense moment in the Cold War, and the United States and Soviet Union are suddenly supporting the same side of this Middle East conflict, both backing the country that will support the status quo, nothing changing, allowing their great power struggle to continue as it has. But by the summer of 1982, Iran is now pushing into Iraqi territory. Much of their campaign focused on the city of Basra. If Iran can take Basra, it will cut off Iraq from the Persian Gulf, preventing them from shipping out their oil. Iraqi forces are outnumbered here, so they start to dig in and build trenches, erecting barbed wire barriers, planting landmines, and surrounding the city to stop Iran from taking it. The fighting starts to resemble the brutal warfare of World War I, waves of artillery strikes, and the Iranian military resorting to human wave attacks where thousands of boys and men charge over open fields, leading to huge numbers of casualties.
Oh my goodness.
Iran is not successful in taking the city, but this attack does weaken Saddam, showing that he's vulnerable. And this is where we need to look to the north, to talk about the Kurds. The Kurds are a minority group in the north of Iraq. They've been long suppressed by Saddam Hussein, and they see this moment as an opportunity to break away from Iraq to make their own country. So Kurdish forces start fighting with the Iraqi army, taking towns and villages. So now Saddam is fighting two different armies, one of which lives in his own country. Iran starts sending support to the Kurds, who have a presence in this mountainous, oil-rich part of Iraq. If the Kurds can hold it and keep Saddam's regime away from all of this oil, it would have a major effect on this war. This is a big deal for Saddam, and he switches tactics to make sure he can control this northern area. He escalates by using chemical weapons against the Kurds as well as the Iranians. Shells filled with mustard gas, weapons that cause extreme burning and blindness, a weapon that is illegal under international law. But even still, the global powers who are supporting him mostly look the other way. The US starts sending technology and money to Saddam, even restoring official diplomatic ties with Iraq. This allows Iraq to buy technology from the United States that helps them develop their weapons programs, including the horrific chemical and biological weapons that he will soon be using on the battlefield. They need him to keep fighting, because this war has changed. It went from protecting Saddam from revolution to now using Saddam to weaken Iran. So they keep supporting him, showing him that he can use chemical weapons without being punished. The chemical attacks help push back Iranian forces, and the war reaches a new stalemate. 1984 is the year that the oil war begins in this conflict. Iraq starts attacking Iranian oil tankers in the Persian Gulf, using new jets provided by France, a new entrant to this conflict. Saddam warns that he'll also attack any ship going into Iranian ports. Iran retaliates by attacking oil tankers carrying Iraq's oil. The oil that the entire globe relies on is now at the center of this increasingly brutal conflict. Hundreds of commercial ships are attacked by both sides, resulting in the death of over 400 civilian sailors. The Iraqi army drops bombs and artillery shells containing deadly chemicals, blanketing the entire town with a cloud of deadly gas that sinks into homes and buildings and the underground shelters where many were hiding for protection. It's a brutal attack that kills over 5,000 Iraqi Kurds, mostly unarmed civilians. Fear of more American attacks, along with a new offensive by Iraq, pushes the Iranian forces to withdraw from the country, and both sides finally accept a ceasefire. The war is finally over, and after all of this, the borders were unchanged from before the fighting.
Accomplished absolutely
But in some ways,
nothing.
this was really just the first round in a larger conflict that has continued through to today, a war for the future of the Middle East.
You also see the means that they will use to accomplish whatever they're trying to accomplish. These people will do anything, bro. Like, their view on war is just like, it's crazy. We will not take it as far as they will. So them getting chemical and biological weapons is like, it's terrifying, bro, because they're gonna use it.
One that the United States is deeply involved in, but that most expresses itself as a Cold War between Saudi Arabia and Iran, who now fuel civil wars around the region in Lebanon, Syria, and Yemen, backing their own proxy fighters and making these conflicts worse. But another major takeaway here is that this war defined Iran's relationship to the rest of the world, especially the United States. Iranian hardliners came to feel confirmed in their belief that they could never trust an outside world bent on Iran's destruction and seemingly unconstrained in their violence, leading some leaders to conclude that only nuclear weapons could stave off disaster from the outside. Saddam Hussein's Iraq emerged battered by this war, humiliated by this failure against Iran. He faced growing internal resistance from his people, which he suppressed with more and more violence. A decade after Saddam had gassed his own people, the US finally blamed him for it, turning it into a byword for his cruelty and the centerpiece for their demand that he step down. A few years later, George W. Bush would cite these weapons of mass destructions, the ones that he would never find, as a reason to invade the country, to topple Saddam. Bush's war room was filled with the same officials who had covered for Saddam and his war crimes in the first place, and making it so crystal clear that even though this war between Iran and Iraq ended decades ago, the Middle East we see today is built off of what happened during those 8 brutal years.